September 2nd, 2025. Caribbean Sea, off the coast of Venezuela. A U.S. military strike team tracked a suspected drug boat racing through international waters carrying narcotics. This was part of a smuggling operation funneling drugs toward American shores. At 3:47 p.m., the order came down: engage the target. Within minutes, U.S. forces opened fire. What happened next has been described by some witnesses as an execution at sea. If the reports are true, the question remains: who gave that order and why? Smash that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe before we walk you through exactly what went down in one of the most controversial military operations in modern U.S. history. The U.S. Southern Command had been tracking drug smuggling routes for months, part of a broader operation to choke off cartel supply lines running from Venezuela and Colombia into the Caribbean. Intelligence spotted a suspicious vessel leaving the Venezuelan coast at high speed. No transponder, no identification. Classic profile of a go-fast boat, the kind cartels use to move hundreds of kilograms of cocaine in a single run. These boats are built for one purpose: speed. But this time, U.S. forces were ready. Satellite tracking, infrared imaging, and signals intelligence confirmed the boat was part of a known trafficking network operating out of Venezuela. Intelligence reports suggested the crew had links to multiple cartel organizations believed to be a mix of Venezuelan and Colombian nationals, including remnants of the FARC dissidents and Tren de Aragua, a violent transnational gang that's expanded from Venezuelan prisons into drug trafficking, human smuggling, and extortion across South America. U.S. forces moved to intercept, but the boat refused to stop. The crew began tossing packages overboard to lighten the load for a faster escape. That's when the call was made to disable the vessel. The first strike hit hard. It tore through the boat's engine compartment. Fuel ignited. Flames erupted. The vessel started taking on water fast. Within 2 minutes, the boat was going down. Survivors jumped overboard. Initial reports indicated that at least 2 crew members appeared to be armed when the boat was first struck. But within minutes, most were in the water, unarmed, wounded, and no longer a threat. Under the laws of war, specifically the Geneva Conventions and the Pentagon's own Law of War Manual, combatants who are shipwrecked, wounded, or surrendering are considered hors de combat, meaning out of combat. Due to this, they cannot be lawfully targeted. But that's not what happened. According to survivors who were later rescued by Venezuelan authorities and fishermen, U.S. forces didn't withdraw after disabling the boat. According to survivor accounts, U.S. forces reportedly circled back. Witnesses claim gunfire erupted again. This time, allegedly aimed at people in the water. Multiple survivors described being shot at while clinging to wreckage. Others said they watched crew members get taken out trying to surrender. One survivor claimed he was fired upon while unconscious in the water. By the time it was over, at least 4 people had lost their lives. Others were critically wounded. Some survivors were eventually pulled from the water by passing fishing boats hours later, miles from the strike zone. Sources cited by the Washington Post allege that the order may have come from the highest levels of command. Don't let anybody survive. Kill them all. Reports claimed the phrase originated from Pete Hegseth, President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense at the time of the strike. Hegseth had been briefed on counter-narcotics operations in the Caribbean and allegedly endorsed aggressive rules of engagement designed to send a message to cartels. If you run drugs toward U.S. waters, you won't just be arrested, you'll be eliminated. His defenders argued the crew members were legitimate combatants, armed drug traffickers engaged in criminal activity that directly threatened U.S. national security. Under that framework, they claimed the strike was lawful and the second attack justified. But legal experts, human rights organizations, and even Pentagon lawyers disagreed strongly. The Pentagon's Law of War Manual is crystal clear on this issue. Shipwrecked individuals, even if they were combatants moments earlier, are protected under international humanitarian law once they're in the water, wounded, or no longer capable of fighting. Article 41 of Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions explicitly states, a person who is recognized or who, in the circumstances, should be recognized to be hors de combat shall not be made the object of attack. The Pentagon's own manual echoes this. Persons parachuting from an aircraft in distress and persons shipwrecked at sea are understood to be rendered defenseless by their situation and are protected against further attack. What this means is that once you're in the water after your boat sinks, you're no longer a legal target, even if you were shooting at U.S. forces 5 minutes earlier. If these accounts are accurate, legal experts argue the second strike would be a direct violation of that principle. Just recently, 3 key questions dominated the conversation in Washington, according to The Hill. Who gave the order? Were the survivors really combatants? If the strike was lawful and justified, why the secrecy? Some speculated it was to protect Hegseth's nomination for Secretary of Defense. Others believed it was to avoid international backlash and potential war crimes investigations. Either way, the silence spoke volumes. Lately, new reporting suggests the second strike may have been deliberate. Video footage, which investigators have reportedly reviewed, is said to show U.S. forces circling back after the initial strike, repositioning helicopters, and opening fire on individuals in the water who posed no immediate threat. The footage has not been publicly released, but its existence has been confirmed by multiple news outlets. It reportedly shows at least 2 individuals in the water attempting to surrender before being shot. If authenticated, this footage could provide visual evidence of a war crime, one that could lead to prosecutions under international law. Pete Hegseth, in statements to the press and in his confirmation hearings, defended the strike as a necessary and lawful action against a criminal organization that posed a direct threat to American lives. He reportedly argued that drug traffickers should forfeit protections under the laws of war and should be treated as unlawful combatants, subject to lethal force without quarter. These weren't innocent fishermen, Hegseth said in one interview. These were armed criminals moving poison toward American streets. They made their choice. We made ours. Hegseth and his supporters framed the operation as part of a broader strategy to treat cartels not as law enforcement problems, but as military threats and enemies of the state who should be hunted and ended, not arrested and tried. And it raises a fundamental question. If drug traffickers are combatants, do they get the protections combatants are entitled to under the laws of war? Or do they get neither the protections of law enforcement nor the protections of warfare? Hegseth's answer seemed to be the latter. Critics called it lawless, but supporters called it realistic. Months later, the controversy had reached Capitol Hill. Senators on the Armed Services Committee demanded answers. Human rights organizations called for an independent investigation. And international observers warned the U.S. was setting a dangerous precedent. Meanwhile, human rights groups like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch called for the U.S. to cooperate with any potential ICC investigation and to hold those responsible accountable. Venezuela predictably seized on the controversy, calling the strike an act of American imperialism and murder. While Venezuela's government is hardly a neutral observer, the incident gave them propaganda ammunition and strained already tense U.S.-Latin American relations. The Caribbean strike wasn't just about drugs or cartels. It was about something deeper, a shift in how America enforces its interests abroad. For decades, U.S. military operations, even in gray zones like counter-narcotics missions, operated within the bounds of international law. Rules of engagement were strict, protections for non-combatants and shipwrecked individuals were respected. But this strike signaled a change, a willingness to bend or break those rules in the name of results. The order to take them all out is not the language of law enforcement. That's not even the language of traditional warfare. That's the language of extermination, where the only rule is total victory and the ends justify any means. For some Americans, that's exactly what the country needs. A willingness to do whatever it takes to protect the homeland from threats flooding across the border. For others, it's a betrayal of the values that separate the United States from its enemies. The rule of law, respect for human dignity, and the principle that even in war, there are lines you don't cross. As of December 2025, the full truth about the Caribbean strike remains murky. Official reports are still classified. Survivors' accounts are dismissed by some as cartel propaganda. And the order itself, who gave it, why, and under what authority remains unconfirmed by the Pentagon. But the facts we do know paint a troubling picture. A U.S. military strike targeted a drug boat in international waters. The boat was disabled. Survivors jumped into the sea. And then, despite being wounded, unarmed, and no longer a threat, survivors claimed they were targeted and killed while defenseless. And the question America has to answer is simple. Is that who we want to be? The laws of war exist for a reason. They're not just about protecting enemies, they're about protecting ourselves. They're about maintaining a moral line that separates civilized nations from barbarians. If we cross that line and order the ending of defenseless, shipwrecked individuals, we don't just violate international law, we violate the principles we claim to defend. The ocean remembers who it swallows and who it spares, but it also remembers the orders given on the surface, the decisions made in command centers, and the lines we choose to cross. The Caribbean strike may have eliminated a drug shipment, but it also opened a wound that won't heal easily. A wound in the laws we claim to uphold and in the trust we ask the world to place in us. As the controversy continues, one thing is certain. The Caribbean strike has changed the conversation about how America fights its wars. Both the declared ones and the shadow conflicts fought in the gray zones of international law. It's raised questions about executive authority, military accountability, and the limits of American power. And it's forced a reckoning. When we say whatever it takes to protect America, do we really mean whatever? Even if it means ending the lives of the defenseless? Even if it means violating the laws of war? The answers will shape not just how we fight cartels, but how we see ourselves as a nation. If you believe these stories matter and accountability must never be optional, share this, comment below, and subscribe, because the next order could come tomorrow, and the next controversy might be too big to bury. The ocean is watching, and so should we.